Hello and welcome to today's live session for the edX MOOC, Marketing Analytics. Today we'll be answering all of your many questions. We have actually several sheets of really quite probing questions to go through today. And I can't tell you how excited I am to go through today's questions. We have also with us Yulia and Jim, the course facilitators, and they're here to respond to your questions as well. And remember, in addition to the questions we've received from you, both from the questions for Stefan Sorger and also the various forums, we can respond to your questions in real time in text. So as you text in your questions, we're responding to those as well. Generally, the way it works is that we will go through all the questions we've received to date in the forums, and then we'll go through the various questions we get in real time. So we shall begin with page number 1 of the questions. Just to be clear, it goes on and on and on. There's quite a few. Some of them are really good. Again, this is from the forum announced questions for Stefan Sorger. Hi, Stefan. Now that I have gone through your course and learned about segmentation and targeting, how do I decide which media channel to use to get the most effective and efficient return on my investment? So that's kind of a general question. What the students basically asking is, which media channel is good? And I would say it depends on several things. Number one would be what it is you're actually trying to achieve. If what you're trying to achieve is awareness, then something like just a general advertisement that you might find on a YouTube pre-roll or on a Google AdWords response, or even television or even radio or even other things would be good. A lot of it has to do with what your objectives are. I would say it depends on several things. Number one. And then can you turn down so those of you who aren't on the YouTube, if you could please turn down the speaker. Trying to get some delay. So I say number one is the objective. Number two, it would be the measurement. So one of the great things that makes Google AdWords so powerful is that we can measure the results very clearly. We know exactly how many people viewed an ad. We know exactly how many people clicked on an ad. I would say it depends on several things. Number one, and then can you turn down so those of you who aren't on yeah, can we? We have some background noise. So I would say. Thank you.
Jim's still unmuted.
And then Jim, can you mute your mic, please? Getting some background noise.
There we go.
Thank you very much. All right. So without further ado, the question then was effective and efficient tools for advertising. Number one would be the objective. Number two would be the measurement. We need to be able to measure things. One of the challenges that some things, especially I would say television and events have, is they can be notoriously difficult to measure. So I think there's been a lot of work to get them more measurable. So as advertising continues, that will increase more and more and more. One of the things I've seen, especially on television, is a lot of decline in viewership for many different types of programs as people really like to watch content more of the internet. One big exception to that is any type of live sports. So you see, whereas interest in many television programs is waning, interest in live sports has definitely increased. And you can see that in big events like the Super Bowl, like the Soccer World Cup, like many other, really any kind of football game, basketball game, baseball game, cricket game, any type of live event where people can see what's happening firsthand. So again, if you're going to use something like a medium, we talked about three things. Number one, objective. Number two, measurement. Number three, timing. So if it's a live event. And now I'm going to leave it off with number four, which is audience. So what audience are you trying to hit, and how well does that particular media channel target that particular audience? One of our constant challenges is to figure out which media channel best hits a particular target. All right. Number two, what is the definition of an indirect competitor? A lot of manufacturers have clothing apparel lines. Does it make almost everyone indirect competitor? So good question. We have I would say indirect competitors, specifically, and indirect competition in general. In competition structure, or in a competitive landscape, we're going to have direct competitors. Those are people with products and services that are similar in nature to what we offer, and that, they offer the same types of clothing. We have principal competitors, so not only are they direct competitors, but they offer virtually identical lines. And then with indirect competitors, it's a substitute that could function in some way that could replace our offering. Now, with something like clothing, clothing is easy to make. Could you make your own clothing? Yeah, you could. You need a sewing machine and some fabric. It's pretty easy to get a sewing machine, or even just a needle and thread. It's pretty easy to get fabric. I mean, something you could buy it, you could make it, you could loom it. Get some cotton, you could loom the whole thing. It's something, I don't know when clothing was invented, but a long time ago. Humans have been wearing clothing a long time. There's probably something we don't know about the technology of making clothing, but after all these centuries of making it, there's probably not that much. So it's something that's easy to make. So because of that, many companies make it. We all have different styles and desires for clothing. So that means that we're going to have a lot of competitors, many competitors. In any industry where a product is relatively profitable and where there's essentially no barriers to entry, and I would say clothing is one of them, you're going to have many competitors. So how do we survive in a world with many competitors? And the answer is it's hard. It's hard to survive in a world where there's many competitors. And that's why you see so many apparel retailers struggling in the last, I say in especially the last year or so. Many retailers have closed down, especially in some of the coveted demographics, such as young professionals and tweens, because many of them are moving to buying things on the internet. And one of the issues with the internet is because people can see all of the offerings all in one place, it allows you to shop in a much more efficient and effective manner. Great for the consumer, not so great for competitors. So if you charge more than what other companies are charging for similar products, it's going to be difficult to make that work. That being said, many competitors have doing an excellent job of marshaling their brands and have managed to maintain relevance in a world where it's still difficult. I think one of the challenges we're going to have in this move from a retail competition for apparel to an online competition for apparel is matching buyers with products. So right now, if you go to Amazon.com, if you go to Alibaba.com, and you say, I want a blue shirt, I don't know how many shirts Amazon offers, but it's got to be in the thousands. And that would be difficult. So, here's shirt number one. It's such and such a brand, such and such a price. Shirt number 2, you're going to have to manually evaluate every single choice, for thousands and thousands and thousands of selections. And I can see a day coming where someone's going to build an AI app to allow you to try on virtually a lot of these things. And my guess is that it's going to be some sort of an AR enhanced experience, artificial reality enhanced experience, to allow you to try on this clothing. And you see some companies like My Virtual Model already in this space. So when it comes to looking at indirect competitors, they're really not, clothing isn't really indirect competitors. I would say it's worse than that. Pretty much all of them are direct competitors. An indirect competitor would be a company that makes something that you could wear as clothing. Could you wear a burlap sack? I guess you could. I don't know why. But the bad news is, if you are Old Navy, if you're Zara, if you're H&M, if you're Abercrombie & Fitch, if you're any of these brands, you are facing tremendous competition, which is why you see them doing so much promotion, so much advertising, just to maintain relevance in a sea of competition. So it's not really indirect competition, it's worse, it's direct competition. I would say also most of the competitors have not done a good job creating what Warren Buffett calls a moat or a sustainable competitive advantage. There's a few exceptions. I think Zara has done a good job in expanding rapidly internationally, but even they have to be careful with making their products relevant over time. And then does that make almost everyone an indirect competitor? I would say it makes everyone a direct competitor, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, there's going to be different types of clothing for different types of segments. Someone interested in an Ann Taylor type of apparel would not be interested in a Zara, but maybe, I mean, in general, they won't be. In general, an Ann Taylor is more of a traditional line and Zara is more sort of fast fashion. But there could be some overlap there. I think one of the things that retailers need to do is kind of define who they are to make their advertising easier. Watch this space. A lot of retailers are failing. I don't know how many retailers failed this year, but I remember in earlier last year, many retailers failed. And many department stores are failing as well for exactly that reason. Too much competition and not enough variation, not enough relevance to what clothing means today. Number 3, how can feedback directly from market penetration be thrown into overall product development? Okay, so I guess what this means is we are getting feedback from the products and services that we're selling in the marketplace, and we want to know how to apply that to others. And I would say it depends on how good your competitive intelligence is. In the companies where I've worked and continue to work, we do quite a bit of work in competitive intelligence. As many of you figured out from my notes in the book, I used to be a competitive intelligence analyst for a long time. And we did tremendous amounts of work in assessing competition and in assessing how well our customers think about our products. Certainly on the education side, I look at comments from students, kind of our customers, to find out what's working and what's not working. It's one of the reasons why we look at the comments and the questions in the forum as much as we do. In terms of how we look at the penetration for product development, yeah, I want to see what's working. So I would say up until about 20 years ago, the typical process would be that we product developers, I used to be a product manager, we would do market surveys, we would do focus groups, we would go and ask people what they wanted in a product. And then we would go out and build it. We say, okay, this is what people want. I'll go out and build it. And we put it in the marketplace. And I would say the results there were mixed. They were mixed. Sometimes a product would be good, and sometimes it just wasn't good. And I'd say it wasn't until, I'd say about 20 years ago, when a lot of marketers finally realized, oh my goodness, a lot of the techniques which we've been using, which is just to ask people what they want, aren't working. The focus groups aren't working the way we thought they would. It turns out that, and I'm still personally struggling with this, a lot of consumers, they won't tell the truth during market focus groups. I guess they'll say things that they think will make the focus group later think better of themselves or think better of the customer. I'm still struggling with that one. And I've seen people out and out lie on surveys before. And I don't know why. So we have to take this input with a grain of salt, and that's led to a general shift in market research away from focus groups, meaning asking people what they want, more toward ethnographic research, where we give up asking people what they want, and we just look at what people actually do. So we just follow people around, look what they actually do. In the past, that was literally physically following people around. Now it's really more behavioral research, where you will use cookies on websites and other things to track, which pages people go to, and with that offer up what we believe are relevant choices of ads based on the actual sites they've visited, not what they tell us they want, but the actual places they've gone, the actual choices they've made, which is why when you go back to Amazon after buying something, it'll give you recommendations based on the actual pages that you looked at. And that's new, right? I'd say one of the big revelations with that really came with the invention of the Apple iPhone, where Steve Jobs said, screw it. I know what people want is a better flip phone, but I think there's something better. And I know that not one single person is asking for an iPhone, but I'm going to create the iPhone. And he went away, created the iPhone, and people adopted it like crazy. And then, of course, it was copied by virtually every telephone manufacturer. And now all we see are iPhones. But that was an example of no one asking for that product and people giving it to them. And I think that's a big part of product development now, is coming up with new ideas, whether people ask for it or not, and testing it. So in the old days, whereas we might just have one product and we launch that, now we'll launch 10 products, 20 products, and we'll just see which one works. So that's how we use market penetration for overall product development. We see what works and do more of that. If it doesn't work, we do less of that. I think that's new. We don't ask people what they want anymore. We just do it and see what the market reaction is. Next question. Is quantitative strategic planning matrix, QSPM, more of a theory, or is it a practical tool that is used in modern day companies? Oh, it's a very practical tool, especially if you're in a big company. Actually, let me back up. So QSPM, it's a method where we capture all the wants and needs from different stakeholders in organizations. And we capture them basically a glorified spreadsheet. In the book, again, the book, Marketing Analytics, this is the recommended textbook for the class. We talk about this quite a bit in chapter 5. So in chapter 5, we talk about QSPM and how it can be used in big organizations that struggle trying to find out solutions that satisfy multiple stakeholders. Again, if you haven't bought the book already, please do so. It's going to be used in sections 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the class. You're getting back your money 4 times when you buy the book. It's sold directly through Amazon. We don't use any traditional publishers. We cut out the middleman. That gives us the ability to have a much, much lower price to all of you, as opposed to most textbooks, which are $200 and up. This is a quarter of that cost, actually even less if you go to Amazon.com. So in the book in chapter 5, we're talking about QSPM. It's the ability to capture all of the things that people want, all the different stakeholders that people want. And then capture it all in one tool. In the book, the structure is basically a SWOT matrix: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Although other mechanisms could all exist, as long as you get everyone's wishes and desires as expressed in terms of these criteria and in terms of weights, we get them all in one tool, and then it's a simple spreadsheet analysis to get the weights multiplied by the ratings to come up with an overall score, and at least use that score to guide the decision. What's great about that tool is that it allows us to capture all of the different stakeholders in the organization and put it all on one instrument, thereby giving us a good tool. And because it's so simple, really, it's this one multiplication for each row, and then we just add up the rows, so very transparent. We can give good guidance. People trust simple tools. And because everyone was heard, it gives people their day in court, their social justice. They feel good about the outcome. Not necessarily do you have to do what that tool indicates, but at least it gives you a good indication about what the collective group wants. And in areas that are very political or ones with many, many stakeholders, it can be a useful tool. So I say, yes, it's a very, very practical tool. And I would say also, this book was actually developed. It took me 5 years to write this book, to do all the research and write it. And it's based on my own work within companies over my entire career and clients within my consulting engagements, and captured what works and what doesn't work all in one handy reference. So all the tools I mentioned in the book have all been applied in industry. Next up, we have an interesting question. Would you consider the use of guerrilla attacks by a company morally wrong? So I'm going to start with, is marketing morally wrong? I don't pretend to be an ethics professor, but I would say that the general purpose of marketing is to match buyers with sellers. We want, in a world where there's a lot of choice, we want to make sure that all of the buyers are aware of all their different options. It's still up to the buyer. We're not coercing the buyer to do anything in any way. All we're saying is that, hey, here's a option. If you don't want that option, you don't need that option. You don't have. No one's saying you have to buy it, but we feel compelled to at least allow you to know about the option. So, if you buy food and all you buy is TV dinners, I want to at least make you aware that you can buy organic, healthy produce. Does that mean I'm going to force you to buy that? No, but you should just be aware that other options exist. And in a way, attacks or marketing efforts, or whatever you want to call them, by other organizations, letting you know about different options, I don't know if I'm going to be as altruistic as calling it a service to mankind, but at least, letting you know that other options exist. But again, it's still up to the buyer. The buyer has complete control as to what they want to do. They can choose to get things. They can choose to not get things. I think as buyers, we have the obligation, responsibility to look at all of the different offers that are coming our way and evaluate them and see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And every buyer in general are going to have different decision criteria. So it might be wrong for this person, might be right for this person. And in fact, one of the things that segmentation targeting and positioning give us is the ability to have lots of choices in marketplaces. We don't have just one choice of coffee. We don't have just one choice of mustard. We have lots of different coffees. We have lots of different mustards. It's up to you to figure out which one you want. Number 6, do you think that life stages, best known as generational demographics such as millennials, baby boomers, Gen Z, and others, concerns, opinions, perceptions should be considered in the social trends and PESTLE? Okay, so PESTLE is something we cover in chapter 2 in the book. That's for market insights. So PESTLE stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. It's 6 different areas where we can study trends and behaviors over time to see where we think society in large is going, or where markets in large are going, or where industries in large are going. So we can look at different things based on those 6 criteria. Why those 6? They're just traditional, the ones that we just use a lot. So chapter 2 in here, get the book, read that if you want to learn more about PESTLE. But PESTLE is this ability to look at these 6 different aspects from a generational demographic standpoint. That'd be under the S, stands for social. And social is one component. I would say many jurisdictions have a strong political component. We're seeing that in society right now, that some of the major political changes that have occurred lately have had demonstrable effects on our economy and will likely continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But there's also social effects, and to some degree, different societies and different generations have different wants and needs than the previous ones. That being said, I will say that I am personally not a huge fan of such broad generalizations. Terms like marketing to millennials, assuming that all millennials are lazy and entitled, and maybe Yulia and Jim, you can help me out here with the other broad generalizations of this whole demographic. I think it's personally ridiculous to think about an entire body of humans. Is it 40 million people? 45 million people? A lot of people. Saying that an entire body of humans are all lazy and entitled, I think is a little demeaning. And also, I don't think it's personally accurate. Nothing, Yulia? Nothing, Jim? Nothing? No viewpoints, no comments. All right, so my course facilitators have nothing to say when it comes to generational demographics. Okay, here we have one. One size does not fit all millennials. Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. I would say that I see marketing to women, I would put in the same camp. Like, all women are the same, so surely all women will respond to this. Marketing to men, all men are the same, so surely they will all respond to this. No, I disagree with that. I think one of the big advances we've come as a society is that we don't have that one size fits all mentality. So I'm not a big fan of that. In fact, I wrote, the biggest chapter in the book is segmentation. What kind of person writes such a big chapter on segmentation? It's because I believe in it. It's because I fundamentally don't think all millennials are the same. I fundamentally don't really like marketing to millennials. I find the whole concept actually kind of ridiculous, as if everyone that happens to be born on a certain year is all going to behave the same way. There might be some changes, if you say that people born on a certain year tend to drive at a certain age, then yeah, maybe You'll say, hey, are you interested in a new car? Because you may be driving then. But even then, it's hard. Even then, it's hard. So I would say, yeah, maybe to some degree that generational demographics are good, but there's many more effective tools than just looking at treating everyone as a millennial or a boomer or a Gen Y or a Gen Z or something like that. And I'm getting back for the information from the course facilitators, and one of them said, you know, I'm a millennial and I'd be defensive. So would I. You know, I don't want to be characterized with a group as everything else. Thank you. Let's see here. I think both, off to the next question. I think both product development and market penetration seem to have some overlapping ideas as both target existing market set of customers. Yeah, maybe. In the product development strategy, new products and services are introduced to the existing customers. That's true. If I go to the same Dunkin' Donuts store and order just coffee, and the cashier offers me their existing DD245, I guess that means you get 2 for $5 egg, sausage, cheese croissant. I guess that means you get 2 items for $5. And this is I don't go to Dunkin' Donuts that much, but I assume that means that we're going to have some new offering where you get an egg, sausage, and cheese croissant, and you get 2 of them for $5. Okay. I just made a plug for Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts, where's my money? Just kidding. Would this be an example of product development or market penetration? Existing or new product to who? Well, again, I don't confess to know the full Dunkin' Donuts lineup, but the way this person is describing it, well, I'll take it both ways. I'll say, number one, that this 2 for $5 egg, sausage, and cheese croissant, let's say it's always been there. Let's say it's always been around. They've had this since they made the cruller donut. In that case, it would definitely be market penetration, because all we're doing is we're just saying the same things we've always served to the same people we've always served. And we're just reminding them, hey, I noticed you got a dozen of these donuts. Would you also like a dozen of these donuts? Or I noticed you've been in the store every single day for the last 8 months buying a dozen glazed donuts for your office. Boy, we got a special where maybe instead of just buying a dozen, we give you 2 dozen. And imagine, you know, for the price of 1 dozen, because we'd like to keep you as a customer. But, you know, the second dozen, they offer, it's like a variety pack. It's not just glazed donuts. We offer all these different types. And of course, my thinking is that if I do that, if I offer these free samples, I can move them from the glazed donut where I have low profit margins to these other types that I charge more for, and maybe I have higher profit margins. That's still market penetration. I'm still saying the existing stuff, which is breakfast food, to the existing market, which in general tends to be office workers who bring donuts in for their office. That seems to be the main market of Dunkin' Donuts. If I were to offer something new, so we're going to start offering beer and wine at Dunkin' Donuts. That's new. I don't know how that would. I'm not recommending that. But let's just say we're going to offer beer and wine at Dunkin' Donuts. I know ordinarily we offer breakfast food, but we're going to offer beer and wine in there, and we'll see how it works out. That would be definitely product development. I don't know how that would go. It's definitely a new product. It's something new for Dunkin' Donuts. To the best of my knowledge, Dunkin' Donuts has never offered beer and wine in all of their stores before. It would be new, and they would offer it presumably to their existing customers. Existing customers might say, I don't really think it's wise for me to bring in beer and wine in the morning to my group. yes, it's true. We'll occasionally have beer or wine or other alcoholic beverages during lunchtime or maybe during the day to celebrate a big win, but we don't, as a rule, offer it every single morning to employees, at least for most companies. Maybe there's someone that does. So that would definitely be new. Not that I would recommend it. So yeah, the what you're describing there, which is to offer an existing product to an existing market, that would definitely be market penetration. Market penetration. Again, in market penetration, we offer the same goods to the same people, to the same groups of people. Okay, so that'd be that. And then if we had, we could also do what they call market development. It's just where we offer it to a different group of people. So let's just say that we don't want to have just people that like breakfast food in the morning that brings it to office people. We want to offer it to an entirely new, different people, different class of people. And we'd say instead of looking at office workers, we want to maybe target construction workers. And so we're actually going to have like these Dunkin' Donuts vans that drive from construction site to construction site throughout the day, bringing food. That's actually kind of a cool idea. So imagine this fleet of vans all over the place where they kind of all go throughout the countryside delivering donuts and food to keep people motivated, to keep them moving. Many construction sites where I've been do not have any vending machines, do not have any ongoing places. So unlike many offices where I go to have snacks and coffee available pretty much the entire day, many construction sites don't. So maybe if we had like a fleet of vans that would deliver this food, you know, hot donuts, hot coffee to construction sites at different times, we might be able to do that. So many construction sites now, for example, have lunch wagons, lunch coaches that come to the construction site for lunch. And maybe if Dunkin' Donuts says, well, we'll just do that for donuts, but we'll do it throughout the entire day, or maybe at least at traditional break times. That would be market development, in that they're, in addition to the office crowd, they're looking at going out and targeting the construction worker crowd. All right, questions continue. They go on and on here. Oh, we got a bunch of R questions here. Please explain how to install R on a PC and Mac and required packages to answer quiz questions in Unit 3. All right, so R is a statistical programming language. It's developed in a language called S. So R follows S, which is funny to say. So R it was developed back in the 1990s, and I would say it's really increased popularity ever since 2010, really taken off. And you see many big companies like Google and Facebook are using it pretty actively. By the time you're reading this, you probably should receive the weekly update, and that's got a link on how to find the video. If not, just watch for the video. We'll send a link out later in one of the forums. But in that video, we'll actually show you step-by-step how to actually install R. So in there, what we did is we actually took a machine, we actually stripped out all the R components, and we actually show you step-by-step, number one, how to install R, which is basically you just go to Google or any other search engine and you say download R. And usually most search engines know what kind of device you're searching from, and so it'll be clever enough to figure out whether you're downloading R for Windows or R for Mac or R for Linux or any other operating system. In the rare case that it doesn't, I guess you could just type in download R for Windows. I've never seen that happen. It's always figured out what you're on. But in the rare case that it doesn't, you can just type it all in. Then you'll go to a page at R. And at that point, it'll basically say, click here to download R. And you'll click on it. and it'll start downloading it. In a few cases with Mac, Mac completely changed its operating system back in 2012, 2013. It went from what they call the snow leopard regime to a new regime and put in something called Mavericks. It's a totally different operating system. Because of that, there's different versions of R, ones that run on the pre-Mavericks version, and then one that runs on the post-Mavericks version. So on R, it'll give you the option, are you running pre-Mavericks or post-Mavericks? Oftentimes, in such cases, you also have to actually download Mavericks for your Mac computer because it's counted on by a lot of programs, not just R, but other things as well. And then, you have to know what your computer is and then download the appropriate version for your computer. You click on it, it'll download it, you launch it, and you'll have something called the R console. The R console is basically just a big window waiting for you to type something. And at that point, you would type in whatever was appropriate for whatever it is you're doing. Typically, the way it would work is you'd want to load some data into it, and you can either type it in by hand, just type it according to the instructions given in the course, or you can load it from an external source, such as a Microsoft Excel data file. Of course, R is actually not a Microsoft product, so it has no idea what Microsoft Excel is. So you have to give it a neutral version. And so to do that, you would take Microsoft Excel and you would save it in the neutral version of that, which is CSV or comma separated value. So each value is separated by a comma. And then once you have it in CSV format, then you can load it into R. And I will say that CSV, it's a category. It's not always literally values separated by commas. I don't know why they call it comma separated values. It really should just be character separated values. And maybe C can be interpreted as character separated values. In some places, like continental Europe, the currency values use periods to designate different numbers of zeros. So every third zero gets some sort of a delimiter character. In the United States, it's a comma. In continental Europe, it's a period. And then the decimal point is also different. In the United States, we use periods in the decimal point. In continental Europe, we use commas as the decimal points. So it would really depend on where you are in terms of whether you should use a comma separated value or not. So in the case where you're in continental Europe, you can't use commas to separate the values and you need to use something else. You can specify within R what you want to use as a separator for the different values. And that's it. And so how would you learn that? How would you learn that? You go to help. So you would basically go in R and you would say, if the command was read.csv, which is the command to read a CSV file, you would say question mark, type a question mark, and then put read.csv, and then it would give you all that information. Another tool is basically just to say, go into a search engine such as Google and just say help with separating values in data files. In terms of which packages, so this reader has a question about packages to install. I don't really know what you're trying to do, which specific exercise you're talking about. There are many exercises in Unit 3, but typically the way it works to install a package, if you have a package called, what should we call this? It's called cup. I have a package called cup. The command for R to install packages is install.packages. So you would, in the R prompt, you would type in install.packages, and then you have parentheses or brackets. And then in there, you would put quotation marks and then cup. So install.packages, parentheses, quotation marks, cup. At that time, it'll then start downloading the package and then installing it. Now, during the downloading process, R wants to know where you'd like to download the data from. There's servers that load R from many, many different countries in the world. And it loads them from server farms, but R doesn't call them server farms, it calls them CRAN mirrors. CRAN stands for Comprehensive R Archive Network. It's basically just a repository for all of the various R files. And then you would select whatever CRAN mirror was closest geographically to you. You can select other places, just be aware that it will take a long time for it to download. So don't do that. Do the local CRAN mirror, install the packages that you need. And you'll see R is not Microsoft Excel. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with. They think that R is another variant of Microsoft Excel. It's not. It's a statistical analysis program. Things that work for Excel don't work for R. So in Microsoft Excel, it'll give you a list of all the commands, and the commands are static. And no matter what you do, the commands are always the same. None of that is true with R. In R, it's focused around topics. I want to do conjoint analysis. I want to do regression analysis. I want to do dimensional reduction. So whatever it is you want to do is going to have its own associated commands and packages. So conjoint's got its own functions and packages. Dimension reduction's got its own packages and functions. Regression, segmentation, everything has got its own set of packages and segments. How do I learn about those? Well, you learn about R. Start doing the work. You can search for typical packages, and you'll find that many topics, such as regression analysis, have multiple packages within R. And every package has its own strength and weakness, just like any other computer language. You need to find out what that is. And one of the purposes of this course is to help guide you toward that process to help find which packages work for you. All right, please explain high versus low market growth rate, relative market share, and cutoff points related to developing BCG product portfolio model for resource allocation. All right, so we talk about that, I believe in chapter 7, the BCG model. And it's used a lot for what we call portfolio allocation. Portfolio allocation, chapter 7, in the product analytics section. So in portfolio allocation, what we're doing is we're saying which products are really, really good and which products are really, really bad. And we want to do more investment in the products that are really, really good and less investment in the products that are really, really bad. Why is that? Because the products that are really, really bad, for some reason, people just don't want them. People don't want the products that are really, really bad. We might try a little bit of development in the products that are really, really bad, just to see maybe if we made a clumsy mistake to bring it back. But in general, once the product has been a huge failure, it's hard to bring it back. And one of our jobs as product managers is to acknowledge defeat, learn from that, and move on with the new product. Of course, Apple developed its first iPad back in the 1990s. It was called the Apple Newton. It was a complete failure. People just weren't ready for an iPad back in the 1990s. People weren't ready for an iPhone, which essentially was. It was like a phablet, I guess they call it now. People weren't ready for that in the 1990s. People were not ready for an iPhone or an iPad in 1997 when the Apple Newton was released. And Steve Jobs figured that out and he killed it. What was good though is he was clever and he figured out what he learned from that failure. And so when it came out to the When it came up for him to redesign the iPhone and the iPad, he took the lessons learned that he got from the failure of the Apple Newton and brought it forth. So even if you do have a bad product, which the BCG model calls a dog, you can still learn from it and hopefully make a star someday. So the BCG model, which stands for Boston Consulting Group, has 4 different categories. At the bottom is products that just aren't good. There's very low market share in a low growth area. They're called dogs, which is too bad. I actually like dogs. I wish they would call it something else. And then there's a few products that really aren't selling well, but are in high growth areas. And a lot of those are question marks. We're in this high growth area. Somehow we managed to stumble upon an area that people really want, but we cannot, for the life of us, figure out how to make any money at it. I would say probably the closest one here would be Apple TV, where I think people like Netflix. I think people like these other streaming things, but Apple just can't seem to make Apple TV work. In a world where Roku does well, Hulu does well, many other products and services do well, Apple TV is struggling. And that would be a big question mark. It's definitely a growth area, but Apple just cannot seem to get it. I think they're on generation 4 right now of Apple TV. I might be wrong. Maybe it's generation 3, maybe it's 4, but they're still struggling. Then you come with other areas, eventually getting to the stars, which are areas where it's got great growth and also great market share. The market share we look at, generally, it depends on the structure of the market. There's some markets that are pretty straightforward, such as the iPhone or cell phone or smartphone market, where there's a few leading competitors, Apple, Samsung, Huawei, to some minor degree, kind of tier 2 or tier 3 or tier 4 competitors like LG, HTC, etc. And then many other much smaller players, but much more straightforward as opposed to other markets like clothing we mentioned earlier. In worlds where the market is very concentrated with big ones like that, we would take a look at who our number 1 competitor is and look at the market share based on that. And for that reason, many groups like the NPD group will monitor market share for smartphones over time and give you that. And then it would be up to the company to figure out what that market share cutoff is going to be. What is a lot of market share? So a lot of market share for the iPhone market could be different than a lot of market share for the bread market. So bread, there's many competitors. I'm not aware of any company that has more than 10% of market share for all the bread in the world. Why is that? Because it's a commodity. And then what would be the cutoff? Well, like I said, the cutoff would be dependent on that industry, dependent on the structure of that industry. And then high versus low. So we talked about, so high market growth rate would be higher than average, typically. And again, the company would look at the industry growth rate. If we're higher than the industry growth rate, then that's high. If we're lower than that, then that's low. And something like bread, I don't think bread as an industry is growing all that rapidly. So you might even say, you know what, if we get more than 2% growth, that's high. Whereas in other markets like the electrical vehicle market, we might demand higher growth rates because that whole industry is growing very rapidly. Okay, last question for today. Please explain the methodology of conjoint analysis for segmentation. What are the pros and cons of using R versus Excel in the application of conjoint analysis? So in conjoint analysis, the basic premise is we want to understand what people want. And as I said before, we can't just ask them. For some reason, if you ask someone what they want, they don't give you an answer that we can use. So we have to do behavioral observation. One way is to follow them around physically. Another one is to look at their digital footprints. The third way is to actually offer up different variations of the product and see which one they buy. So we have two different versions. We have an iPhone that costs $1,000 and it includes a big screen, and we have an iPhone that costs $800 and it has a smaller screen. If the one that's $1,000 sells much better, we can understand that people are more concerned with the screen size than they are about price. That's called a trade-off. That helps me as a marketer understand what it is that people want. And what we'll hear a lot of is people say, oh, they want a low price, they want a low price, they want a low price, but they don't actually behave that way. So we have to follow what people do, not what people say they do. And you'll see this throughout marketing. And again, I'm not picking on Apple or any other smartphone manufacturer. It's just another one. So that's what it does. That's the process. What are the pros and cons of using R versus Excel? I show Excel in the book in chapter 7 to do conjoint analysis. I'll show Excel only to show how the process works. Many people have used Microsoft Excel before and have a relative comfort about Microsoft Excel. And so when they see something being done in Microsoft Excel, they feel much better about it. That being said, I've never actually used Excel for any kind of industrial work with R, with conjoint analysis. I've always used R. I don't believe that Excel is suited for more sophisticated analyses such as conjoint analysis. That's why we have tools like R and SAS and SPSS. The big reason for the use of R with conjoint analysis is the data sets. We need to look at multiple data sets when we do conjoint analysis, which is something that R and other programs are good at. And Excel was never designed to be good at. Excel was designed to be a spreadsheet. And it's a great spreadsheet. But asking it to do more than that is pushing its limits, and so you won't get good results. So definitely you want to use R and not Excel when it comes to conjoint analysis. Again, I do show it in the book with that, but I do say in the book, hey, this is just to demonstrate the process. It's basically like when you first learn to drive or first learn to do anything, we're going to take it step by step in a very comfortable environment, very easy. But after you learn it, you won't do it that way anymore. You'll come up with a new version. So it's just a teaching you, just sort of an easy, gentle introduction to that. Well, but thank you for all your questions. And my goodness, we've actually consumed the entire hour with all your questions. So again, keep those questions coming. We will have another live session coming up here shortly, and we'll go through the additional questions at that time. Thank you all. Believe me, thank you so much for being a part of this course. It's great having so many thousands of you in the course. It really means a lot to me. It means a lot to the university. It means a lot from just from a pedagogical perspective, knowing that we're doing the right thing, knowing that we're providing value to the world. To see so many of you enrolled, so many of you actively engaged. I look at the engagement numbers, they're great. Many of you are really taking this stuff seriously. Greatly appreciated. And we especially want to give a shout out to all the people in the classes that are helping out other students. We really appreciate you stepping up and taking that active leadership. So again, my name is Stefan Sorger. This has been a live session for the Marketing Analytics course series on edX. We appreciate all the questions and everything you do for the class. Thank you so much again for being part of this exciting journey. Thank you.